Iran has condemned the US after it accused Tehran of supplying the missile fired into Saudi Arabia from Yemen last month. The government summoned the Swiss ambassador, who represents US interests in Iran, to pass on the message. It called the allegation, which was made by the US ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, both irresponsible and provocative. Well, Sigurd Neubauer is a Middle East analyst at the Gulf Forum International, and he joins me now from Washington, D.C. Thanks very much for coming on Al Jazeera. I don't think this is the kind of war that you say who's winning, because it looks that there can be no winner. But who is the momentum with at the moment? Is it because the Houthis are moving forward on the ground, or is it because the Saudis are managing to get more of an initiative around them?
Well, I think that if you look at the missile the intercontinental missile that was just launched and intercepted, all the evidence point to Iran. We know that Yemen does not have the domestic capability of producing these missiles on their own. So the question is, why did this missile being launched today? And it comes really only a day after President Trump declared his national security strategy in Washington, where Iran was designated as the #1 U.S. strategic adversary. So the missile attack today is a response to that strategic decision that was launched by President Trump, and it is also a warning that more of the same could come.
Is it, in some respects, are the Houthis not really playing into the Saudis' hands on this one? They're firing these missiles, they're not hitting their targets. The fighting is still going on the ground, but an awful lot of people are losing their lives. I just mentioned the totals at the moment, because the Saudi-led coalition is still bombing.
That is correct. The difference, however, is that U.S. intelligence support are helping the Arab coalition with reducing the civilian casualties to the best efforts possible. Obviously, it is in asymmetric warfare, but the escalation of a missile attack on Saudi and now putting Riyadh within range underscores that the Houthis has really knocked up their game, and as a local and indigenous insurgency group, being able to carry out capabilities to that level underscores that this is an international confrontation, primarily between Washington and Tehran, with Saudi now being the new theater that the Iranians are targeting.
And you mentioned some of the bigger nations that are obviously waging this war by proxy. Is there nothing that the wider international community can really do with the sorts of figures of people being killed, the sorts of people who are desperate for emergency food aid? It seems to be making no difference as people get upset about this as to those fighting in this proxy war.
Well, I mean, there are a couple mechanisms that are underway. If you look at, for instance, the GCC summit that took place in Kuwait about 10 days ago, one of the things that was not reported, or at least widely reported, was that the GCC came to a consensus on the need to support the UN peace process for Yemen going forward. What makes that difficult in reality is, of course, that now that Ali Abdullah Saleh has been killed, who was considered a co-partner with the Houthis, if you will, and now that he's been killed and the Houthis are alone in Yemen as the strongest political actor, the question is, how do you move a peace process forward? And the reality really is that this is directly tied to the U.S.-Iran struggle, and we will see that there will have to be some diplomatic accommodations to resolve a de-escalatory situation between the Iranians and the Americans. How that is being done, we don't know. But as you reported in your segment, the Swiss ambassador was summoned. We know that Switzerland has for a long time served as a go-between between Tehran and Washington. And perhaps in this environment, the Swiss could help de-escalate tensions, because now with this missile, we have seen that Saudi Arabia and Riyadh in particular is within range.
But that's an interesting point. Does that mean that the Swiss will need, though, somebody to fill this vacuum, this sort of vacuum that the death of the former president Salah has left now, because he was actually able to have some sort of negotiation with him? Do they have to find somebody else within either the Houthis or on the ground that they can try and start some sort of talks with?
Well, there are two mechanisms that run parallel. One is the inter-Yemeni reconciliation process, which is very difficult, of course, to push forward, and that is something that Oman could help out with. Oman is a neutral party to the conflict in Yemen and has traditionally enjoyed friendly relations with all the domestic political actors. So that's something that Oman potentially could help shepherd forward. On the international arena, we have seen that the Iranians are now using the Houthis and helping them with military planning and military cooperation to target the Saudis. So within that context, relations between Iran and Washington are what is at stake here. And this is within this arena is where Switzerland can help.
We are very grateful for your thoughts on this. Sigurd Neubauer, thanks very much for joining us.